The corrupt bargain was the name given by Andrew Jackson and his associates to what he believed to be unethical behavior in the election of 1824. In 1824, there were four major candidates for president who split the votes of the Electoral College. Andrew Jackson of Tennessee, Henry Clay of Kentucky, William Crawford of Georgia, and John Quincy Adams of Massachusetts. As you can see from the electoral map, Andrew Jackson in green received both the most popular votes and the most electoral votes. However, no candidate received a majority in the Electoral College, so, as provided for in the 12th Amendment, the president had to be chosen by the House of Representatives. Further, the 12th Amendment stipulated that the president would be chosen from the top three electoral vote receiving candidates. However, Crawford suffered a stroke during the election and was no longer a viable candidate, so it came down to a race between John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson. As you can see from the map, Jackson had received only 153,000 popular votes, which would seem like a very small number. However, remember that in 1824, of course, there was no women's suffrage for almost 100 more years, and property requirements were in effect for white males. Thus, there were only about 360,000 people who were qualified and did vote in the election of 1824. Out of the race for being chosen as president then, Henry Clay, Jackson believed, made an agreement with John Quincy Adams that if John Quincy Adams pledged to choose Clay as his Secretary of State, then Clay would use his influence in the House of Representatives to make sure that John Quincy Adams was chosen as president. Remember, Henry Clay was the Speaker of the House, and that his home state, Kentucky, did vote for John Quincy Adams. Kentucky going for Quincy Adams was a bit out of the ordinary. It would have been more reasonable that a western state like Kentucky would have voted for another fellow Westerner, even from Tennessee, another fellow Westerner like Andrew Jackson. So then in 1824, the House of Representatives chose the president, not for the first time. Remember that in 1800, the Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr tied in the Electoral College, neither of them receiving enough votes as the incumbent president John Adams and Pinckney both received a large number of electoral votes. So 1824 was not the first time the House of Representatives chose the president. With the choice of Henry Clay, then Andrew Jackson cried foul, saying a corrupt bargain had been reached, as is portrayed somewhat in this political cartoon of the day. The motto says, or rather the caption says, symptom of a locked jaw, a not uncommon disease that made it so people could not open their mouth and they would become terribly ill and perhaps die from that. In this cartoon, Henry Clay has taken physical control of Andrew Jackson and is sewing his mouth shut so that he cannot talk, so that he cannot become president of the United States. Now today, if one of the politicians representing Iowa had made a deal for him to become Secretary of State or Secretary of Agriculture, we might say, well done, that's one of our people. But in the early 19th century, that still is thought to be an unethical or immoral thing to do. In any case, John Quincy Adams was chosen by the House of Representatives to become president. Henry Clay was chosen as Secretary of State, a veritable launch pad to the presidency. Jackson claimed the election had been rigged, that it was indeed a corrupt bargain and vowed vengeance, which he will get in 1828. No evidence is found that anything immoral or unethical was done, even by early 19th century standards. However, a mark is put on the presidency of John Quincy Adams, a mark that it's difficult for him to overcome.